I'm excited to hear about a different topic today, which is why retirement is not a dirty word. And I think you have to prove that one to us.
Why retirement is a dirty
word. Is a dirty word.
I think I better go out and come in again.
Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you,
so
Beth.
much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, and such a pleasure to see so many people who claim that they read what I wrote in the Washington Post all those years ago. You guys must be getting old. But if you read it, it must mean that I wrote it. And I want you guys to understand that it isn't just about who writes for a newspaper, it's about who follows the writers after they write. And it's a tremendous pleasure to say hello to this lady right here. Suzanne Tobin had the misfortune of being the last set of eyes on Bob Levey's Washington, my column, for how many zillions of years, Suzanne?
I think I started in 2000 maybe?
That sounds about right.
When did you leave?
2004, so
So 5 years.
5 years, and she's still upright, and she's still speaking to me. And anybody who thinks that, oh, hey, cool, you can write a column in a big newspaper, you can say anything you want, you kind of can, but you also kind of can't. Because telephones work, and often at night, Suzanne would be on the other end of the telephone with one last little question. One last little question. And before I get into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, Suzanne, this wasn't you, but this was a copy editor who worked in much the same way that Suzanne did. One night, the copy editor calls me at home. The kids are doing their homework. It's 8:30 at night, something like that. And this copy editor says, well, I'm looking at your column for tomorrow. It looks fine, but you made one little mistake. You wrote about the University of Pennsylvania, and you capitalized the T in the. I said, time out. I learned in the 5th grade what a proper noun is. And she said, oh no. The style of the Washington Post, this is the Bible. There are only 3 people or institutions that get a capital T. Ready? The President of the United States, the Pontiff, and the Washington Post. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. And our kids are walking around, and Daddy's yelling into the phone at this editor, and the editor's yelling back at me. You know how your kids kind of tiptoe around you? Daddy's really losing it. We're screaming and yelling at each other. What am I going to say? That's what the style book said. That's the Bible. End of story. I didn't lay it on Suzanne. I didn't lay it on any other editor. They had a group of senior editors at the Post, which we called the College of Cardinals. And they met every January to consider changes to the style book. And I went in there with my deep bass baritone voice, pounding the table, and said, you know, this is why people hate newspapers. It's their tea. It's their tea. It's not our tea. It's their tea, and it's been their tea in Philadelphia for 200 years. And who are we to say that the tea is down? Ladies and gentlemen, I won. The tea is now up. All T's in all similar, before all similar nouns are up. Yippee, huh? So not only have I not retired, to get to a cute segue into our topic today, not only will I never retire, but I still have the same bass baritone voice. I still get out of bed every morning ready to rock and roll and rumble. And I want to suggest to you that you should do the same. And I'm not going to browbeat you about this because I know that everybody's situation is different. But all of you know that this is an extremely big flashpoint among people our age and between people our age and people who are the ages of our children, our grandchildren, and our neighbors. I hear all the time about how I have to be retired. I walk through National Airport about to get on a plane, and somebody will come up to me and say, didn't you used to be a U.S. Senator? This is what happens when you got a lot of white hair, you know? I mean, can we just correct the record a little bit? 1/3 of the United States Senate is female. I'm not. 1/3 of the United States Senate is under the age of 55. I am not. But people want to sentence guys who look like me to be retired, to be golfers, and that's it. And they don't want to hear that you're not retired. About 2 weeks ago, Jane finally prevailed on me, the cheapskate in our family, and she said, we got to go buy another bed. So we went to buy another bed. Have you been in a bed store lately? Mattresses, shoulder to shoulder. You got to walk like this to get past them. And here comes the one salesman in the place, and he comes marching up to us and says, here comes a nice retired couple. This guy didn't know us. He didn't know if we were retired. No, I do not plan to dye my hair. No, I will not do that. But people want to paint a picture of you when you're a certain age and you're a certain look, and I resent it tremendously. I am not retired. I will never be retired. In fact, I make it a point not to pass up new opportunities. I don't always have to gin them up. That's nice. But I also don't say no very often when they come to me. I think you should do the same. And I want to talk to you about possibilities in your lives. And then I want to talk a little bit about a man you know very well, and then about a man you don't know very well. Let's talk for a minute about a man who is 82 years old, whose name you know, Joseph R. Biden, Jr. You know him. You know the narrative that's sticking to him like super glue right now, that at 81, when he stood down as President of the United States, that he should have left, that he should have known enough to leave, that he would have left the country in a better place if he had. This attached to Biden because of his performance in that famous debate, as you know. It attached to Biden because a lawyer had found him to be incapable of tracking things in a session about 6 months earlier. And it attached to him also simply because he was 81. And all of you understand that chronological age is not the only thing that should determine whether you got your marbles or not. It simply is not. What are those factors that do? Your health. I probably could quit right here. Your health is everything. It's everything every day. If you have your health, you have everything. I am proud to say that I have 8 doctors. 8. I'm not proud of having 8 doctors, ladies and gentlemen. I'm proud of the fact that they all say, you bore me. Keep going, man. I am all of 80 years old. I plan to live for a very long time. I hope I can. But even if I were 70, or even if I were 90, or even if I were 50, it's all about health. And everything we talk about here today, all of the preaching that I'm doing today about how you should never retire, your value is in your experience, your value is in your attitude toward the world that you've learned about all your life, it begins with health. And of course, it also matters what your financial situation is, and no one would ever make light of that. Suzanne can correct me here, but you won't, I'm sure. One of the very wonderful things about spending your life in the newspaper world is that it's exciting to go to work every day. We did this every day. It was cool. The people we worked around were great. The energy was great. The sense of accomplishment was great. And the turn time was very small. Whether you did great work or bad work or sort of in between work, the thing came out the next morning and then you started all over again. The decks got cleared. The one thing that never happened in the newspaper business was money. Why didn't we make more money? What happened?
I mean, my kid made more money
I'm
the
not-
first job that I ever
Isn't
had.
that, it's insane. I mean, I beat myself up about this all the time, and help me beat myself up about this. I was born on June 2nd, 1945, the last week of the worst war in the history of the world. I was born into the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest economy in the history of the world, and I still don't have any money. I don't know how I did that. Some of the guys I played football with in high school have gone on to spectacular careers, making zillions of dollars. One guy, I gotta tell you about this guy. If I never see this guy again, he's been retired for 20 years because he can be. He made $1 zillion importing women's shoes from Italy, leather shoes. You probably own 10 pairs of them, huh? You probably,
Trust me, I'm close.
okay. You probably made this dude as rich as he is, right? This guy is so absolutely impossible to be around because all he cares about is money, 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 money. He lives, get this, in a gated community in Florida that is inside a gated community in Florida. They really don't want any riffraff around him. He's on his third wife. He has 7 cars. 7. How many cars can you drive? I think we've just answered that one. This guy is all about money and all about money. And every time I see him at a reunion, he's bragging to me about how much money he has. And I don't know what to say to the guy other than what I just said to Suzanne. We had fun, didn't we? We had fun even if we never made any money. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not trying to make light of money, but you know as well as I know that here in Montgomery County, where all of us live, there is tremendous pressure on the question of housing. How many of you have children who would like to live in Montgomery County and just can't do it? It's too expensive. Yeah? They'd love to do it. They would not love to rob a bank in order to do it. I mean, our son and our daughter-in-law, they live in D.C. with their 2 young children. They would love to move to Montgomery County. They scour the ads every single day. They both have excellent jobs with excellent incomes, and they can't do it. And because I didn't import Italian shoes, we can't help them. So housing is a tremendous problem in this county, and it pits young people against old people. How many people in this room own their homes? Whoa, okay. How many people in this room still have mortgages on their homes? Okay, half. How many people in this room with mortgages on their homes are paying an interest rate of less than 3.5%? Almost all of you. Have you seen what the interest rates are? If you walk into a bank today, they are almost twice that. So think about what the real plot is here. Why don't you oldies get the heck out of the way so young people can have what you have? Why don't you oldies sell your house, no matter where you go from there, in order to let some young person buy your house even at an astronomical interest rate? And because you say, and we say, and all of us say, why? I want to be here. This is my home. I mean, Jane and I have lived in Montgomery County for almost 45 years. A lot of you probably have too. This is home. I want to be in Montgomery County. That's why I'm here. If I wanted to be in Florida behind a gated community of a gated community, I could probably do. Did you even know there was such a thing? Woo! You go through the, he told me all about it. You go through the first gates, there are 2 guys there with sidearms, you know, making sure you're okay. You drive a half a mile and then you do it again, in case you talked your way past the first guy somehow. That's just beyond insane, but okay. Look at the tension between young and old about housing. Look at the tension between young and old in the workplace. Maybe some of you worked in industries, Suzanne and I did, where there was no mandatory retirement. But you know that there is mandatory retirement in certain areas. If you're an airline pilot, you are gone at age 65, no matter how healthy you are. What is another example of mandatory retirement? A lot of doctors are required to give up their surgical practices at 65 because they just say, well, we can't separate out every single surgeon, so we're just going to make a blanket rule. If you're 65, you're out of here. And then retirement in a lot of other areas is so attractive that people retire at absurdly young ages. If you go into the United States military at age 18 and you do 20 years, you can retire at age 38. Just let that sentence wash over you. You can be 38 years old and retired. When I was 38 years old, I was still playing softball in the Montgomery County Rec League. I wasn't thinking about retirement. But that, of course, sets the table for the great message for all of us here, which is that even if you retire from life number 1, life number 2 and 3 and 2.5 and 3.5 beckon. Now, when people say to me, oh, Bob, how do you like being retired? How do you like buying a bed if you're a nice retired couple? By the way, we bought the bed. I mean, this guy needs to go back to school to learn how to be a salesman, doesn't he? But, all right. Even if you're retired, there is a lot ahead of you. Even if you can retire, your experience is tremendously valuable. And because your experience is tremendously valuable, that does not have to come at the expense of somebody whose age begins with a 3 or a 4. It can be complementary. And I want to just shout out to a young lady in the back there, Miss Tukey, who gets it about an institution in this community that we both absolutely adore. I just finished 10 years as a trustee at Montgomery College, our 43,000 4-campus community college system in Montgomery County, Maryland. And if you think Montgomery College is over there somewhere, that it doesn't touch people in this room, it can and it does. Every one of you can be a student at Montgomery College tomorrow morning for no money. How cool is that, huh? You can study a raft of curriculum that spans more than 110 majors. How cool is that? And you can be a part of this community in ways that really fix what's broken. How many of you are former federal employees? Just a couple. I think you know what has been happening in Montgomery County since February. If you don't know, I will tell you. We used to have 77,000 federal employees in Montgomery County. Today, we have 59,000. This is a disaster for this county. It's a particular disaster for this county because we have so many employees, because we have 4 major federal installations in this county. It's not pretty and it's not going to get prettier. But what did Montgomery College do? What did Montgomery County Public Schools do to try to get into the middle of this and to deal with people as they really are? You can now go to Montgomery College if you're a fired federal employee and go through a quickie certification process that will allow you to become a teacher in Montgomery County Public Schools. Isn't that wonderful? And hundreds of people are doing that. Same thing if you go directly to a public school in this county. You can say, I'm a fired federal employee, I have a lot of expertise, if I know math, I'm a scientist, I can teach math in a public high school. There are 26 of them in this county. They're dying for you. And then you can also do a kind of community service that this county so badly needs. And that is, like this addict, serving on boards. Yeah. I knew I'd get you, Tukey. It took me 25 minutes, but I knew I would get you. Not only did I do 10 years on the board at Montgomery College, but I did 2.5 years on the Montgomery County Commission on Aging. Any of you know about that? This is basically a lobbying organization of, by, and for old people. And people would say to me, well, what qualifications do you have? And I would say, well, I get older every day. That's pretty much it. I worked for the Office of Community Partnerships for years as a Montgomery County Fellow. This was a volunteer yet semi-paid position where I worked to integrate into the public world all of the various ethnic groups in Montgomery County. And then in the political sphere, I've been very involved. I spent 5 years on the board of the Committee for Montgomery. If you don't know what that is, this is a group of leaders from all walks of life in the county who get together and essentially say, we're going to spend a day and a half in Annapolis every single year talking to those knuckleheads who represent us over there, and we're going to say, this is what we really care about, we citizens. This is not organized lobbying. This is not paid lobbying. This is not somebody who says, my thing is more important than other things just because I know you, Mr. Delegate or Miss Senator or anything like that. There are many, many opportunities for all of you. And if any of you are comfortable with the World Wide Web, are you? I try to be. I really try. I really fail, but I really try. You can sign up for an alert that comes into your mailbox whenever there is a reason for it to, a list of all of the boards in Montgomery County that are seeking people. I commend this to you folks. You can sign up for it at the montgomerycounty.gov website. It will inflict emails upon you forever and ever. Amen. So that's some of what you can do and should do and could do. Here's where the traps lie. Judging Joe Biden just because he's 81, I know that isn't the whole story there. That's pretty dangerous. But there's another very hot political topic going on in Washington, D.C. right now. Maybe some of you who still read newspapers saw this over the last couple of days. There's a woman named Eleanor Holmes Norton. Nods, good. She is in her 18th term representing the District of Columbia in the House of Representatives. She's 88 years old. Eleanor has had an incredible career, even before she got to Congress. But in Congress, she has been a really effective advocate for the District of Columbia. And as all of you know, that's a really strange role because she isn't a real member of the House. She can't vote on the floor. She's not really a congresswoman. She's what's known as a non-voting delegate. And yet, she gets reelected, reelected, reelected. Over the last week, the New York Times has run a 40-inch story about how she can't do it anymore. She's just too old, too helpless, too senile. She was up there at a committee meeting where she said nothing for an hour. Somebody slipped a piece of paper in front of her, and when it was her turn to speak, she just read from the piece of paper, and that was it. Nobody wants to run against her because she's such a huge presence in DC politics and has been for so long. But the Washington Post 2 days ago, bless its heart, wrote an editorial that said it's time for this woman to stand down. What did I say 15 minutes ago about health? She does not have her health. This is not a question of being 88 years old. It is not a question of being female. It is not just a question of the political realities on the ground for whoever's in that role. It is that Eleanor Holmes Norton at 88 is fading badly. Okay, whose call is this? That's the whole debate about Joe Biden, isn't it? Who should have made that decision? Should he have made it? Should people have made it for him? Who should have listened to whom? Who held the ace of trumps to say, okay, all the noise is done, now we're going to be making a decision, you're either in or you're out. And I will predict that the exact same thing is about to happen to Eleanor Holmes Norton. Exactly the same. It's got to be her decision at the end of the day, but how does that decision get made? And who makes it? Who whispers in her ear? Who should? What ought to happen here is that the person, him or herself, ought to see the field and ought to make the decision without being prodded or pushed or cajoled or extorted or any of that. But it doesn't happen that way, does it? It doesn't ever happen that way. I want to tell you one story from my own life, and then when I'm done with that story, I want to tell you a bit about that book that's on the table in the back there. But here's a story about retirement that happened, I think, in the right way. I know it's hard to imagine me as a teenager. I was once. And one of my pals on the football team is still one of my dearest, closest friends. And he didn't make $1 zillion with Italian women's shoes. He made $1 zillion by being born into one of the biggest and most successful real estate families in the history of New York City, where I grew up. He's my boy. You've heard of the Durst organization, maybe? Maybe you've heard of the name Robert Durst. Huh? Anybody? He's the guy who was the subject of those TV shows over the last few years. He murdered one of his wives. He murdered 2 other people. He skated for all, you're there now, Robert Durst. And he was the oldest son of this company, and he just played himself completely out of the lineup. And the company went to the second son, who is my friend, Douglas Durst. And Douglas Durst has been one of the most successful business people in the history of this country. When it was time to rebuild the World Trade Center, Doug did it. When it was time to build the Condé Nast office building on 42nd Street, Doug did it. When it was time to redo the whole riverfront along the Hudson River so that there could be a bike path there and green trees and not just ugly, awful docking places for ships, Doug did that. He's a great person. He ran this company for 35 years. He knows how old he is. I know how old he is because we're the same age. You know, we joke about that. You can't lie to me about your age and I can't lie to you. Here's what happened over the last few years in New York City real estate. First, the pandemic happened. And if you're in the commercial real estate business, you're done, man. Nobody's coming to work anymore. Nobody's renting huge office spaces. Oh, good for you. You build another office building where the World Trade Center was. Who's renting it? There are a lot of open spaces in those office buildings. And what about residential? Well, that is a big, big problem about money. It's unbelievable how much it costs to rent an apartment in New York City. I mean, we're about to see a 33-year-old man become mayor of New York City because he says that rent should never go up in New York City. Well, that's a crowd pleaser for sure. So Doug got into his 70s and his late 70s, and one of his relatives was waiting in the wings, a guy whose age began with a 4. And this is a 3rd-generation company, and you think, okay, Doug, this should happen easily, right? It should happen seamlessly. Doug, age 70-something, should get the heck out of the way and make room for the next generation. He wouldn't do it. He would not do it. I called him, all of the football team called him, we would call him twice, we would call him again, we'd say, Doug, it's time for you to smell the roses. And he'd say, do you write that kind of cliche? Is that what you did for the Washington Post? I said, no, I did better than that. He just wouldn't get the heck out of the way, even though this young man was ready to take over the company. And finally, we arrived at something that penetrated his thick skull, which was this. You don't have to go from 60 to 0, Doug. You can go from 60 sideways. You can go into what's called phased retirement. And that is what my friend Douglas has done. And now that he's in his early 80s, he is doing two things. One, he kept one project for himself, only one. This is a huge housing complex in Queens overlooking the East River, and it's going to be full of affordable housing for cops and firefighters and teachers and all of the things that New York doesn't have. That's his baby. But here's the other one. This is amusing. Doug and his family own a huge spread in Westchester County, New York. It reminds me of Poolsville, actually. You drive for 20 minutes and you don't see an awful lot, and finally you're at his place. And Doug boards horses there. And Doug, 40 years ago, landed on the front page of the Wall Street Journal by going into business selling horse manure. The Wall Street Journal thought this was amazing. Here's this guy, the scion of these famous real estate developers, and he's in business selling horse manure. Well, yes, he was. It was quite successful. What else is Doug doing now in his early 80s? He's gone back to selling horse manure. Going sideways, going a little bit back in time. Not going from 60 to 0, but going from 60 to something else. By the way, I got off one of my best lines ever. He called me to tell me how great the horse manure business is doing. So I said, Doug, you may not be smelling the roses, but I know what you are smelling. Okay, before I tell you about the book, speaking of patting myself on the back, I gotta tell you this one. I love coming to Poolsville. You've got a fabulous community here. It's beautiful, it's great. And for years and years, when our son was a serious soccer player, he played on Sundays out here on soccer fields. And one of the biggest and best was at a place about 5 miles from here called Muldoon's Farm. Nods. Whoa, what a piece of property that is. I don't know if any of you have ever really seen it. Say again? It's right up the road. Yeah. And all of us urban warriors from down county, you know, who made our lives in a big city called Washington, we'd say, oh my God, look at that. Okay, can I brag just a little bit? My wife is here, she understands. So we're standing on the sidelines at a soccer game, and one of the other dads says to me, so what do you think about Muldoon's Farm? And I really got this line off without planning it. I said, I just wish I had met Mr. Muldoon's daughter before I got married to Jane. Is there a Muldoon, by the way? Is he still around? I mean, whoa, that piece of property. Do not let...
Parking.
Say again?
He manages the parking.
Or the soccer.
When the soccer field.
Oh,
parents show
that was Muldoon? Oh
I
my,
mean, he does do that, but.
oh my gosh. See what you can learn by coming to Poolsville? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take your questions in just a minute, but before I do, we interrupt this program for a brief commercial announcement. My book back there is for sale, and I think you would like it. And I think it in some ways encapsulates a lot of what we've been saying here today. I've spent or misspent my life in downtown journalism, mostly in the 20th century. But since then, I've spent or misspent a lot of my life in and around politics in Montgomery County. I've really gotten to know it, certainly during 10 years on the board at Montgomery College, which is nothing but politics, but also learning what the business community does and does not want, what's really going on with the governor, what could be going on with the governor. There's a lot happening here. So the book that I did comprises both of those worlds. The book is called Larry Felder Candidate, and the plot is very simple. Larry is a famous Washington newspaper columnist who abandons journalism to run for Congress in Montgomery County, Maryland. And you're not going to hear this every day, kids. More than 90% of the book takes place in Montgomery County, Maryland. And it's, you know, first scene is at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Bethesda. There's scenes in gated communities in Potomac, just one gate. And then there's a scene at the parking lot in Silver Spring. There's all over the place. You get the idea. This is a hometown book for people just like you who want to understand what really happened in downtown journalism and what happened in politics here. Now, what's the plot? Larry abandons journalism to run for Congress in this county. And all kinds of things happen to poor Larry. Love happens, of course. Corruption happens. The unexpected happens. Suzanne, he runs afoul of a young female reporter at the downtown newspaper. Yeah, I know. So get up here and sell the book here. And this young female reporter is one of those aggressive ones who eats broken glass for breakfast, and she and Larry collide. And I won't tell you more except that the good guys win in the end. Now, the book has gotten a lot of nice reaction, and I've talked about this book all over Montgomery County. But I think if I had to trot out one reaction to the book that I especially like, it comes from none other than Jamie Raskin, who actually does represent the 8th District of Maryland, which is the southern piece of Montgomery County in the U.S. Congress. And, you know, Jamie is now world famous for a million reasons. He bought the book, he read the book, and he said this: "I'm just glad I never had to run either against Bob Levey or Larry Felder." It's fiction, kids. It's fiction. Now, it's very accurate fiction, and it's going to be for sale as soon as I'm done here. Jane will manage the sale. I will sign copies for you if you like. And helpfully, he pointed out that the Christmas shopping season is right around the corner, so multiple copies are encouraged. Just one more story, and then I'm actually going to shut up. It happens once in a while. I'm bragging too much, but the book is really accurate, and nothing in the book happened, but everything in the book could have happened. And I was doing one of these a couple of years ago, and they asked me to read a segment from the book. And there's a scene in the book where Larry, on a summer night on Green Tree Road in Bethesda, how we doing here? Home? That homey enough for you? He's taking a walk, he's wearing flip-flops, cutoffs, t-shirt. It's one of those summer nights where you can hear the cicadas and the TV sets in people's houses as you walk. And for absolutely no reason, writers do stuff like this. I wrote, "As Larry walked along the street, a styrofoam coffee cup from the Dunkin' Donuts at Montgomery Mall blew down the street past Larry." Just a throwaway, you know, color and pageantry, we used to call it. I'm doing one of these, and some guy sticks his hand up and says, "Bob, don't you know there never was a Dunkin' Donuts at Montgomery Mall?" And there goes my reputation. Oh my God. I spent a whole day of my young life trying to find the guy who developed Montgomery Mall. He's still alive. He lives in Florida, one gate. He's 95. I called him, I explained. He told me that they did have a Dunkin' Donuts there for 1 week. I can breathe. Okay, why 1 week? They didn't pay the rent. So why is this guy richer than you and me and everybody in this place? Because he knew who paid the rent. Folks, thank you very much. I hope this has encouraged you not to retire from 60 to 0, but to be big players in this community as you can be. Be who you've always been. You know who you are. You know how strong you are. Get out there and be strong. Thank you. Okay. Time for questions before I join Jane back at the sales table. Anybody have questions about anything at all? Yes, sir, first.
Okay, very good, thank you.
You look like a light. I've got a, yeah, okay.
You okay now?
I'm okay.
I know you're associated with Montgomery College and the board and everything.
Yes.
Is Montgomery College aware of how they play throughout the country?
How they play?
I mean, in
Their
terms of
reputation.
their reputation.
Good reputation.
Do you mean good or bad?
Good.
Very good. I mean,
Well-
you might not know this, but, we have a son, we have two boys, one of our sons went to the University of Oklahoma. And when he transferred his credits from Montgomery College, because he needed to go down there,
Yeah.
they said, he was transferring over, they go, where'd you go to community college? Or, he said, it was a school, he said, because everything transfers.
Well,
Everything.
maybe in his field it does. This is way outside of our strike zone for today, but
Yeah.
it doesn't automatically transfer.
No, but I'm saying it was a very nice surprise.
No, it is, and you see these surveys that they publish all the time. Montgomery College was chosen the 17th best community college in the United. What? By whom? By some 21-year-old intern who had nothing better to do? But thank you. It's a wonderful college. It's really wonderful, and any of you who have not had anything to do with it, you can fix that right away, and you should. It's just, I got to say this, that this is a really odd place, this thing called Montgomery County, because the part of Montgomery County inside the Beltway, in Bethesda and Chevy Chase and parts of Silver Spring and some of North Bethesda and Potomac, is a completely different place from the rest of the county. Kids from those communities don't go there. Adults from those communities don't even know that Montgomery College exists.
It's across the street.
Not down there.
Montgomery College is not in the Tacoma Park area?
Yes, but the richest parts of the county are 14 miles to the west, and you can go to a cocktail party in Bethesda and you can say to somebody, you really ought to take a look at Montgomery College, it's great, and they'll say, what? What's that? Where's that? Who's that? What's that? These people have pulled up at red lights for 30 years behind cars with Montgomery College parking stickers on. They still don't know anything about it. It's crazy. You do know about it. Do something. Yes, ma'am. You had a question, yes.
Yeah, so the Ag Reserve covers about a third of Montgomery County?
Yes, it
and we're
does.
right in the middle of it?
Yep.
Any scenes from your book set in Poolsville? and the Ag
No,
Reserve?
and that's a big oversight. And, if we can go back in time 50 years,
In a future edition?
maybe, but go back in time 50 years, introduce me to Mr. Muldoon's daughter, and we can fix this. We can fix this. Other questions, folks? Anybody? Anybody? Other questions? Nothing about the Post? Oh my gosh.
The majority of your columns, and I remember reading them, when was your last column? You said 2000?
January 2004.
2004, okay.
21 years.
Did you write, the majority of them, the subject matter was, I can't remember.
Local life.
Okay, that's right.
I did not write about politics. I did not write about agenda stuff ever. I wrote about Muzak in elevators. I wrote about love in the office. I did monthly contests about words. I did a little of this, a little of that. I would talk to bus drivers and then write a dialogue column about my talking to the bus driver, even when there's that sign in the bus that says, "Do not interrupt me when I'm under," right. Do I look like a criminal? Yes, yes. So it was really low-level life, ground-level life, and I was so much more interested in that than I could ever have been in covering the world or the White House. I did cover the White House as a young reporter. This is just one quick story. Ben Bradley, the legend, was the editor of the Washington Post, and I was covering the White House in the last part of the Lyndon Johnson administration. I mean, that's a long time ago. And it was so boring. The only thing that was good about my months covering the White House in those days was that I got to be friends with a sound man from CBS News who wanted to lose a lot of money playing me in gin rummy. He succeeded. But this is not a place to be a reporter. They pen you up in the East Wing. They have 2 briefings a day. You're like baby robins, you know. They say, okay, time for feeding. Open your mouth, we're going to put a worm in your mouth. You know, that's not what I became a reporter to do. I want to be out there. I want to be in the story. You couldn't do that. So I went to Bradley in late 1968, and I said, I want off of this beat. And he gave me a look that I will never forget. I can't imitate it, but I will try. You know, son, there's only one story in this town. You don't want to cover the one story in this town? And I said, actually, no. I think covering the local community, which, as all of you know, was exploding in size, looked a whole lot more interesting. I mean, take this whole community as a whole. You know, there were no Michelin restaurants. You could still get on the Beltway without risking your life. The schools were just top-notch with no problems. Crime wasn't a big issue. Everybody was working. You know, the unemployment was tiny. This was a great place to be. But nobody was writing ground-level journalism about actual people doing actual things. You were?
Oh, I did, but I had a question.
See, I thought I'd run up against another writer here. Okay. Yes, sir.
That is, it's been said that the Washington Post has been AWOL for Montgomery County. We lost the Journal, we lost the Gazette. And maybe the Sentinel was there for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And now the Banner.
Yesterday, the Banner. You want to tell them what it is? If you don't, I will.
Yeah.
And it's run by a former Montgomery County guy who ran a series of nursing homes in town.
Yes, he did, but also a huge chain of motels. Choice hotels. Manor Care Nursing Homes, Choice Hotels. He's quite a guy. Yeah, can I build on that? Stuart Bainham Jr. represented Montgomery County in the House of Delegates about 50 years ago when he was the son of a rich man. He hadn't quite decided what to do with his life. He thought it would be politics. He thought he'd be the governor of Maryland. No. He went on to run his father's businesses and made them grow hugely. He tried to buy the Baltimore Sun 4 years ago. He has very long green, and he was going like this. And they said, no, we'd rather sell to Sinclair Broadcasting, and they did. So Bainham said, oh, well, you don't want my money. I'm going to start an all-digital news operation in Baltimore called the Baltimore Banner. And he did this 3 years ago, and it's terrific. Last year, the Baltimore Banner became the first all-digital news organization to win a Pulitzer Prize, the first one. And yesterday, as my writer friend here told you, they opened the Montgomery County Banner to deal with the disappearance of all of those newspapers and the disappearance of the Post. Used to be 11 Post reporters covering Montgomery County. Today, 1. I don't know how you kiss off a market as wonderful as Montgomery County, but the Post has done it for reasons that are just beyond my understanding.
But didn't they just hire the managing editor from the Banner?
Yes,
to
they
the
did.
Post?
Yes.
Well, hopefully that's her influence.
Keep hoping, Suzanne. It ain't happening. The Post is all about national and international, and it's a different world. Yes, sir.
You didn't, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, sir,
You
please.
didn't allude to how you got here from New York.
Oh,
What's the tangled web you web?
it is so tangled, sir, you're going to be sorry you asked him. You know,
Is it part of the book?
it is not part of the book. I grew up in New York City. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I didn't wait to get out of there. I went to the University of Chicago, a marvelous university, where I majored in girls, and I minored in girls, but I spent most of my time editing the student newspaper, and I got affected, obviously, and came out of the university, was really lucky not to go to Vietnam right away, because in a football game, somebody had rearranged one of my knees, and I failed the physical, and so I could go right on with my career, and I did. I spent a year as a cub reporter in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Shall I tell the short story of this? Short, okay. I decided after a year in Albuquerque, I was ready for the big time. I wrote a letter to the editor of the Washington Post. He said, come on east for an interview. I'm 22 years old, 22. Comes time to fly. It's a Friday night, Albuquerque Airport. I can't find any place to park. Round. I'm going to miss my flight. Oh my God. Finally, I get a parking space. I'm running through the airport. I've got nothing to read. 4.5 hours up in the air coming up. I got nothing to read. Now, one thing that Beth did not tell you is that I'm a national champion bridge player. I have more than 10,000 master points. I've written about bridge for more than 50 years. I teach bridge. I play professionally. Bridge and I go back a long way. So I bought a book in the newsstand in the Albuquerque airport, Better Bidding in 30 Days. You know, just one of those junky little paperbacks. I read it all the way, friendly skies, nice weekend in Washington. Show up for my interview. They come down to fetch me and they say, didn't they tell you? I said, tell me what? The editor of the Washington Post has been named over the weekend by President Johnson as the ambassador to the United Nations. And there's a new guy, corner office. He has no idea who I am. I have no idea who he is. He comes out, sticks out his hand. Hi, I'm Ben Bradley. You know, in 5 years, Bradley will be the most famous newspaper editor who ever lived. So we go in his office, and you know, he could be Mr. Friendly and Mr. All Business. Oh, Albuquerque, blah, blah, blah. Oh, did you have a nice weekend? Yada, blah, blah, blah. Then he flips it on and he says, all right, what's the last book you read? This happened 58 years ago, and I cannot tell you to this moment why I decided to tell him the truth. Bradley's family had come over on the Mayflower, for heaven's sake. I don't know why I told him the truth. I remember thinking, well, you had a nice weekend in Washington. Better bidding in 30 days, Mr. Bradley. You play bridge? Yes. You play well? I said, well, I got all these master points. Bradley starts writing on a yellow pad. I can't see what he's writing. He finishes. He frisbees the pad at me, hits me in the gut. There's a bridge hand written on the pad. And Bradley tells me I'm looking at his wife's hand from last night. And he opened a bidding with one club, and the next player passed, and do you play sheephead one time? He's still furious at his wife, and now, okay, I read the room at the grand old age of 22, and I said, oh, no, sir. I would have bid one hard, much better bid. Then Bradley goes on for 10 minutes about how we used to fleece the suckers in the dorm in the 10 cent a point bridge game at Harvard. Finally, he stands up, walks around, sticks out his hand, hires me on the spot. So is that the most far out lucky job interview story? If I had said David Copperfield, if I had said Making of the President 1964, I wouldn't be standing here. I don't know where I'd be. Maybe in a gated community in Florida. One more question, folks. Yes, ma'am, sorry.
Have you ever considered running for office?
Bite your tongue. Yes, I have considered it. No, I have never seriously considered it. No, I would never do it. I'm 80 years old. Who's going to want to vote for me? No chance.
Well, if they hear you talk.
What? If they hear me talk what? What? If they hear me talk what? Am I going to...
convince anybody to vote
Well, thank you, but I don't have any better ideas about how to fix affordable housing than anybody else. I don't have any ideas about how to fix it, except everybody should storm the gates of a certain gated community in Florida and tell that clown to give everybody $1,000. You know? Maybe that would help. Okay,
I have one last question.
one last, and then we're going to be back there.
Okay, I wanted to know, you always said happy birthday to your two children. on
Yes,
their birthdays.
yes, in the Post.
But last I heard, your daughter was going on the musical route, and she
Right.
was doing well in touring groups, I think.
Kind of.
But the last thing after that was that she was playing at the Capitol Steps. Is that still going on?
No, our daughter is a very interesting person. She's in her 40s. She has 2 children under the age of 3, one of whom is only 11 months old, and she soared through the pregnancy pretty easily. And anyway, she has 2 lives. As Suzanne said, she's been an actress all her life since she was this. She studied theater at NYU, and she's been in a lot of shows, but for many years she was in the famous political satire group called the Capitol Steps. Maybe some of you have seen them. They were on NPR, Today Show, but that's only some of it. The Steps died during the pandemic, Suzanne, but there's now a follow-on group called the Capitol Fools, made up of some of the old Steps. And they still tour and they go around the country, and she's part of that. And she always says that as long as she can play ridiculous women, she will work for the Capitol Fools. So she plays Marjorie Taylor Greene, she plays Lauren Boebert, she plays Melania, and back when it was easy to make fun of it, she played Hillary, she played Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she played a lot of people, but that's what she does. She also is, she works for Montgomery County Public Schools. She has a master's degree in special ed. She's part of a group that devises individual education plans for 0 to 5-year-olds. And then Suzanne she buried the lead. Suzanne's son and our daughter were born on the same day.
Was it Patrick O'Brien?
Pat.
81?
81. You remember 1981. Folks, thank you again. I'll be back there. A real pleasure.